folks, Mike Iconelli here again, talking about jig fishing, you know, and there's lots and lots of jigs on the market. I want to talk a little about this jig that I helped Berkeley design called the Finesse Gripper Jig, you know. Before we get into the jig, you know, let's just talk about picking jig colors, because there's millions of colors out there on the market. You know, one of the things I do is I try to carry colors that imitate the forage that the fish are naturally feeding on, right? And so we can keep it pretty simple. You know, if you think about what they're eating naturally in the environment, try to mimic that, right? So, you know, I carry a lot of white and pearl jigs when those fish are feeding on bait fish. If it's shad or if it's herring, you know, some kind of silvery bait fish, I'll pick a white jig. I carry a lot of watermelon jigs, and when they're feeding on bluegill, you know, I go with those green and watermelon colors that try to mimic bluegill and perch. Same thing with crawfish. You know, when they're feeding on crawfish, I like to go with the browns, the amber colors. You know, really looks natural, looks like a crawfish. And then finally, you know, we've got this black and blue color, and this is probably one of my best colors in any water conditions. And my opinion on black and blue is it's a great crawfish imitator when the fish are molting, when the crawfish are molting. You know, all the crawfish go through a process of shedding their shell, and when they do that, they kind of get a bluish color before they molt. And that's when it's its most acceptable point. Bass will eat them up when they're molting, so that's why that black and blue works. But let's look at this particular jig and what makes this special. You know, the gripper jig is a finesse football head style jig. It's got a flat head, and that flat head's going to do a couple things. One is, as it sits on the bottom, it's going to help that jig stand up. And you can see it right there in my palm. That flat head is going to help that jig stand up, stand off the bottom, and have a nice profile. Second thing about that flat head is it skips, you know, and if you think about getting around docks or around brush and you're skipping that bait, that flat head acts like a stone and helps get momentum for that jig to go underneath of the cover. The next thing on this gripper jig is the head. You know, not only did we put realistic eyes on this thing, but we did a recessed line tie. The line tie is inside the head of the bait. What that recessed line tie does is it protects the knot. So on a normal jig, you've got a line tie that sticks out, that knot is exposed. Here your knot's protected, it's buried away. You're not going to have as many hang-ups and break-offs. And then finally on the gripper jig we did a two-part skirt, which is really cool. We've got a hand-tied living rubber front, and then we've got a silicone bottom portion. Nice thing about this jig is you can change it on the fly. If you're fishing and you want trying to imitate a crawfish, all of a sudden you want to get dialed in, you want to change your skirt color, you go ahead and just pull this silicone skirt off. That's on a regular skirt collar. That skirt will come off. Your hand-tied living rubber section still attached. Change your skirt. One last tip before I let you go. In really tough conditions, take that skirt off, get rid of it totally, and just use that little hand-tied living rubber front. Really subtle finesse package. Mike Iconelli here talking about the gripper jig. If you want to catch more and bigger bass, try this thing. I guarantee you're going to get some bites.